Blake Snell is officially off the board. What's next for the Boston Red Sox as they try to navigate through what will hopefully be a big offseason?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free. So you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Friday. Welcome to the show. I hope you all had a lovely holiday yesterday and that you stuffed yourself with so much food. I know I did. Everything was absolutely delicious. And I always look forward to Thanksgiving every year. It's such a great holiday spent with the people that we care the most about. And it's a time to be thankful for what we have in our lives. And I hope you were able to have a good day and just spend some quality, relaxing time with people you love. So here we are on this lovely Friday, end of November. Red Sox and other teams looking to make big moves to improve their roster moving forward. And one of the biggest things that took place earlier this week was that Blake Snell signed a 5-year, $182 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, one of, if not the best starting pitcher available on the free agent market. So that might change things a little bit in terms of the Red Sox approach moving forward. So I'm going to be talking about that on today's show, as well as the player I think is most likely to break out in 2025 and general goals for the upcoming season. So with this Blake Snell situation, the Red Sox are a team that a lot of people pictured him potentially going to. Really good track record of being able to produce when it matters. His postseason stats are very, very good. And he has the ability to lock in when he needs to. And to me, that's a great quality to have in a pitcher, as somebody you can rely on in the postseason. And for Snell, injuries have held back his career a little bit, and that is something that I would be concerned about if he came to Boston. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because that'll be a real bummer for the Dodgers if he ends up on the IL early in the season and can't pitch for them. So I'm looking at that as a factor to consider going into next year. Did the Red Sox dodge a bullet by not getting Snell because of his injury history and not taking that risk of paying him and not getting a lot out of him because he's hurt for a lot of the year? Or did they miss out on a guy who's going to go out there and put up strong numbers and be a key piece of a rotation that's already stacked with the Dodgers? And the thing with the Dodgers is if he's injured, it doesn't really matter that much for them because they already have so many talented starters on that roster that even if Snell were to miss time, it wouldn't really even make a difference that much because you have a guy who would probably be in the back of the rotation anyway because of all the talent they have ahead of him. So it wouldn't impact them as much because they have other guys who will likely pitch out of the bullpen now because of all the depth they have that could move back into a starting role if he were to get hurt. So the Dodgers can afford to take that kind of risk when it comes to the injuries, but the Red Sox can't as much because the Red Sox don't have a complete rotation right now. So what would happen is if the Red Sox took that risk in signing Blake Snell and then he were injured for a lot of the season, then that would be tough because the Red Sox don't really have a reliable backup option that they can go to if Snell were to get hurt. So in a way, it might be kind of a relief that the Red Sox didn't get Snell, but at the same time, it's a bummer because when he is healthy, he is really good. He was the best pitcher in baseball in the second half of the season this year when he was healthy, and that's lethal. That's really dangerous for teams, is going against a pitcher like him when he's fully healthy. So if the Dodgers get that version of Snell, then yeah, the Red Sox would have loved to have that. But the question marks are tough, and the Red Sox have had a lot of question marks in their rotation the last few years. So it makes it tough to justify a little bit taking that kind of risk. So now that Blake Snell is off the board and no longer an option for the Boston Red Sox, it now becomes a question of, okay, who do they pursue next, and what would the plan be for the Red Sox in terms of pitching moving forward? So now that Blake Snell is somebody who is no longer available, and there were reports, according to Alex Spear of the Boston Globe, that the Red Sox never really saw Blake Snell as a serious solution for their rotation. He wasn't their top priority from a pitching standpoint, so it didn't sound like they were as aggressive when it came to pursuing Snell as some people might have thought. So in that regard, that's a good sign that they didn't try to offer him a bunch of money and he chose to go elsewhere. They simply might have just been putting more of their emphasis into other pitchers that they see as more of a fit in Boston, which is totally fine. Now, the question is, who are those fits in Boston? So Max Fried is a name that continuously pops up being associated with Boston before and after the Blake Snell news. And now that Blake Snell has signed with the Dodgers, a lot of people think that the Red Sox are the prime landing spot for Max Fried. And I've expressed my concerns about Fried in the past. I think his age is something to consider, that he's getting up there. So I don't think he has ace caliber stuff as a pitcher right now anymore in his career. And also, there's a greater risk of injury as you get older, just naturally with your body not being as capable of keeping up with the endurance that the sport requires. So I'd be a little bit concerned about him being able to stay healthy. And his postseason numbers in 2024 weren't exactly super promising. So those are concerns I have about Fried. But at the same time, we know what he can bring to the table. He'll be able to eat innings, and he's somebody who, if healthy, will be a good addition to the pitching rotation. But that being said, he's more of a number 2 or a number 3 starter at this point. And on some teams, he would probably be a number 2. But I'm only saying a number 3 with the Red Sox because they do have Tanner Houck, who I believe right now in his career is better than Fried. I think with where Tanner Houck is at and his constant elevation as a pitcher, he would be considered more the number 2 with Fried as the number 3. So that would be a nice addition. However, Fried can't be the only move. I don't have a problem with the Red Sox signing Max Fried because he definitely would help enforce that rotation, but they still would need to get a bona fide number 1 starter because he, to me, is not that true number 1 that the Red Sox would be looking for. So if they do sign Fried, I still think they should try to sign Corbin Burnes as well, or trade for somebody like Garrett Crochet. Because if you look at the numbers of Garrett Crochet and Corbin Burnes, both have the capability to be that true number 1 starter. Corbin Burnes definitely does have some reservations in terms of his consistency. But I think overall, with where the Red Sox are at right now, Corbin Burnes would be the ace of the pitching staff if they were to bring him in. So if they do land Corbin Burnes, they don't really need to trade for Garrett Crochet because then they can use what they have internally to round out the rotation. But if Fried is the first move that they make, I would like to see them bring in another starter in some capacity who is a true number 1, because they still need that true number 1 starter regardless. So if that true number 1 starter comes in and is Corbin Burnes, then you're good. Then that is your number 1 guy. And they could still bring in Max Fried to pitch in the middle of the rotation. And then that would be a solid rotation because then you're looking at either Corbin Burnes or Garrett Crochet as the number 1. Tanner Houck as the number 2, Max Fried as 3, Brian Bayo as 4, and Lucas Giolito as 5. And then you figure out what makes sense to do with Cutter Crawford if you package him into a trade or you move him to the pen or whatever the Red Sox decide is best. They then can do that when it comes to Crawford because then they have a full 5-man rotation. So that gives them the flexibility of deciding, okay, we don't want to keep Crawford in the rotation, so we can experiment with doing something else with him. So at the end of the day, with Snell off the board now, you can eliminate one marquee starting pitcher. The Red Sox cannot miss out on all of the marquee starting pitchers. They need to get at least one of Max Fried, Garrett Crochet, and Corbin Burnes. If they don't get any of those 3, then this would be a very disappointing offseason, and I won't see the pitching staff as being greatly improved. I would prefer for them to get 2 of those guys because that would really help enhance the rotation. But even if they only get 1, that would be a great step in the right direction for this Red Sox pitching staff. And it would allow me to feel a lot more confident in the pitching rotation's ability to win games in 2025. So sign Fried, sure, okay, I'm fine with that. He will definitely be a nice middle of the rotation piece and is definitely an upgrade from the Red Sox middle of the rotation that they had in 2024. But that also needs to involve signing or trading for a number 1 starter on top of that to really make the rotation feel complete. So whether they are really interested in Corbin Burnes and Max Fried, that's fine. Bring both of them in. Whether they're truly interested in that trade for Crochet, that's also fine. You can bring him in too. But the moral of the story is the Red Sox need to focus a lot of their efforts on those players because they need to get at least one of those 3 names that I just mentioned. And obviously, as we look ahead to 2025, we want to be excited about the Red Sox season. So I'm going to be talking about the player that I think is most likely to have a breakout year in 2025. If you're looking for cheaper tickets to any live events of your choosing, look no further than Gametime. I use it all the time for all of my ticketing needs now. I don't use any other ticketing vendor. I use it for sporting events or concerts or musicals that I like to see. Gametime has you covered for all of those different events. And it saves you money because it's cheaper than other ticketing vendors and gives you the view from your seat. So you know that you're not getting a bad view or obstructed view and that the money is worth it. So that's what I love about Gametime. And it also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Once you start using Gametime, you won't look back. That was literally my personal experience. I just found myself using it for literally everything. So I highly recommend you doing that too because you'll end up saving so much money on tickets. It's not even funny. So the Boston Red Sox are due for a strong season in 2025. And not even just a strong season, but due for a season in which they make the playoffs. That would get fans back into Boston Red Sox baseball because a lot of people have started to lose interest over the last few years because the team wasn't very good. So if they go out and make the big moves that they are trying to or seemingly trying to make, then fans will start to get back on the Red Sox train. So with that being said, we can think about the current roster and the future of the team and guys who have a lot of potential moving forward to be big contributors for this Red Sox team. And we will see who's going to be part of that solution and who's not. But we do need guys to step up a little bit more than they did in 2024 in order for the Red Sox to have a big year. And there's a player that I think is most likely to have a big breakout season next year, and that is Ceddanne Rafaela. Defensively, he has already impressed by showcasing that he can do a lot of different things in the outfield and in the infield and make the really hard plays that not a lot of other fielders make. And there were a lot of times when he would make a crazy catch at the wall or a diving play, and the stats would literally show the difficulty level to make that play. And a lot of times those were very difficult plays to make, and not a lot of people would make them. So we already knew that Ceddanne had the defense to be an absolute stud in this league. And he was the type of player that the Red Sox really needed and coveted, because their defense situation was a little shaky for a couple seasons before they brought in this current outfield group. And that was the biggest reason why they extended Rafaela when they did, was because they said, okay, his defense is too good for us to not sign him to a longer term deal. So he already has the defense. His speed is already there too. Between Ceddanne Rafaela, David Hamilton, and Jarren Duran, the Red Sox had a lot of speed in the lineup between Duran and Hamilton batting 1 and 2, and then Rafaela in the 9 spot. And David Hamilton didn't play the whole season, got injured at the end of the year and missed games towards the end, but did get a lot of playing time for a good bulk of the season because of injuries. And Trevor Story being out for most of the year allowed for some other players to get time on the field, like Hamilton, like Romy Gonzalez, like Nick Sogard, who had gotten called up during the season. You saw this group of players that wouldn't normally be everyday players that were starting to be in the absence of Trevor Story. And then you had Vaughn Grissom, who was supposed to play second base and also got injured. So then you got guys like Emmanuel Valdez opportunities to play too. But David Hamilton really stood out because of his speed. So if you combined his speed with Jarren Duran at the top of the lineup, then you had two hitters that could get on base and immediately put pressure on an opposing pitcher to be able to score runs early on in the contest. And then spreading them out and having Rafaela hit in the bottom of the order made a lot of sense in regards to that scenario, because you wanted to spread out the speed. Because if he was batting in the 9 hole and leading off an inning, if he could find a way to get on base, even if it was on a weak ground ball that was lightly hit and the pitcher couldn't make the play because Ceddanne's too fast, then you have your two fastest guys in the lineup right behind him, and the chances of them scoring are very high. So that's another thing Ceddanne has going for him right now, is his speed. So if you check off the boxes of his above average speed and well above average defense, then you're just looking at his bat. And his bat was average this season, batted around 250. And that's nothing to be ashamed of as a rookie. It's not numbers that really stand out, but he wasn't a really bad hitter either. And the thing that holds Rafaela back the most is plate discipline. He swings at basically everything, doesn't like to take walks or be patient at the plate. And that's something that has led to him accumulating lots of strikeouts and not being able to be consistent when it comes to delivering and getting on base and getting that big hit. So he needs to cut down on the swings and misses and be more disciplined at the plate in terms of being able to recognize what pitches he should and shouldn't be swinging at, rather than just trying to swing at everything. So that's one thing that Rafaela needs to work on. But plate discipline a lot of times comes with time and experience. And the Red Sox know that he needs to work on the plate discipline. So don't you think that's something he would be working on during this offseason? And he goes into spring training really focusing on that skill so that he can absolutely nail it? Because if I'm the Red Sox, I'm honing in on that and saying, okay, this is the weak part of his game, so let's work on it. So to me, that feels like we're going to see a lot of growth from him in that area in 2025. And if that's the case, then what's holding him back from having a big season next year? because if you look at the other aspects of his game, he does a lot of things well. And if there's that specific part of his plate appearances that are holding him back a little bit, what's stopping him from breaking out in 2025? I think he's super close to being a superstar player in this league, and people just need to give him a little bit more time because he was a rookie in 2024 and he needed to get acclimated to being part of this team and being on the major league roster and getting used to the pressure that comes with playing in Major League Baseball. That doesn't just happen easily for a lot of players, and get used to that environment at Fenway. And now that he has a season under his belt, I think from a confidence standpoint, he'll feel better heading into 2025, and he'll feel like, okay, I'm starting to gain more of these skills that I lacked in before. So there's not much really holding me back at this point. So when I'm looking at the Red Sox roster and I'm looking at guys who have the ability to have a big breakout season next year, I think Ceddanne Rafaela is the guy that we see that from the most. I don't think there's a lot of things about his offensive game that he's doing wrong per se. I think he has a lot of things that he does well, like his swing itself is very good. And I think he has the ability to hit the ball very far when he is on it. But it's just that strikeouts are causing him to decrease his batting average, and the fact that he's swinging and missing at lots of pitches because he doesn't have as much of that ability to recognize what he should and shouldn't be swinging at, that is causing him to run into some trouble. So I'm excited to see how he performs in 2025 because I think there's a lot of aspects of his game that we can be excited about. And if he can just work on that one part of his game, just work on that plate discipline, be more patient, and be more willing to go out there and take pitches and not swing at everything that comes your way because you want to make contact with it. That's what good veteran hitters do. Some hitters are impossible to pitch to because they don't really strike out. Juan Soto is one of those types of hitters who will take his walks a lot, but he really doesn't swing and miss. So if they can turn Ceddanne into a guy who can cut down on the swings and misses just a little bit in 2025, I think we're going to see a big year from him, and that would be a huge addition offensively to a team that really could use that from him. So I'm excited to see how Rafaela performs in 2025, and I think people will be pleasantly surprised at the player that we see. And coming up, what are some goals generally for the team for 2025? I'm going to be discussing that. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. FanDuel is a great way to win lots of money betting on a ton of different sports. And with it being the middle of football season right now, what better time than to dive into it and start making that money for yourself that you work so hard for every day? Why put in a little bit less work and just bet on your favorite sports and win more money? It honestly sounds like a solid deal to me. So if I'm you, I'm taking advantage of that ASAP. FanDuel has some great deals and some great payouts if you just look at the app. So make sure to download that today. What are some goals for the Boston Red Sox for the 2025 season? That's a question that we ask ourselves as we look ahead to this upcoming year. And when you think about realistic goals, based on what the Red Sox are saying they're going to do this offseason, playoffs need to be the minimum goal. This would be a very disappointing year if they go out and they're aggressive and they make lots of moves to improve the roster, and then they end up not even being a playoff team. And obviously, there are factors that are out of their control, like injuries. We saw a lot of injuries during the 2024 season, and that was a factor in the Red Sox not being able to perform as well as they had hoped that they would perform. And obviously, nobody can control injuries. That just is what it is. But the thing about it is, if they have injuries, they should be able to have pieces that can more than make up for that and be able to have that depth. Because the problem with the Red Sox in 2024 was when somebody got injured who was a key everyday player, they didn't exactly have the backups to be able to compete with other teams because they just didn't really have that depth in the clubhouse. Whereas if they go out and make the types of moves they need to make, say they have a starting pitcher who gets injured, they should be able to have enough guys that they feel comfortable putting into the rotation if somebody gets hurt. An example of this could be Garrett Whitlock. If Garrett Whitlock is healthy, he'll likely pitch out of the pen to start the season because they have a lot of guys already who will likely be rotation guys. But if they have a starter who gets injured, he's somebody that they could put in to the rotation to pitch instead to make up for whoever is injured. So that is a possibility. And with the success that Garrett Whitlock has had in this sport, I do like him better out of the pen, but he has shown us that he has an ability to pitch well in the rotation too. I just think it's hard because his arm seems to not be able to take it that well, pitching that many innings. So hopefully that doesn't end up being the case and we don't get an injury, but you never really know when you have somebody like Lucas Giolito who's going to throw in the rotation, not knowing what he's going to look like and what if he gets injured again or Tanner Houck gets injured. You don't really know what's going to happen with the rotation. So you want to have guys who can compete in that position and not feel like you're undercompensating and you're taking a step backwards. That's the goal that I have for the Red Sox this offseason, is to make sure that they're focusing on that depth and getting enough major league talented players so that if somebody does get injured, the person they put in to fill in for them isn't significantly worse to the point where it helps the Red Sox take a step back as a team. So that's the biggest offseason goal. And say that happens and they really fulfill what they say that they're going to fulfill this offseason. I'm looking at a season in which they win somewhere between 87 to 90 games and they make the playoffs. And in terms of the division, they can win this division if they make the right moves. And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking at here. Is I don't want to go into it saying the Red Sox will definitely win the division, but that should be a goal, because Sam Kennedy and company have said our goal is to win the AL East. So that's another goal I'm looking at here, especially if they sign Juan Soto and he decides, I want to go to Boston because I have confidence that they can win in the future and now. Take advantage of that. Go out and get the best guys you possibly can and win that division. That is a goal for 2025 for me. And the Red Sox won 81 games in 2024. If they win 87 to 90 games, that's a huge leap from that. And that should be enough wins to be in the playoffs easily. Whether it's enough to win the division, we don't know, because we don't know what the Yankees and Orioles are possibly going to look like. But it should be the goal to win the division and make a deep playoff run. These are not unreasonable goals. They would become unreasonable goals if we go into the season with a similar roster as last year and the Red Sox haven't made a lot of big moves to improve that. That's when I would sit back here and say, okay, realistically, our goals should just be to finish the season over 500 and not in last place in the division, which would be a really upsetting conversation to have like, oh, maybe we can squeak into the wild card, because I'm tired of being a mediocre team that just squeaks into the wild card sometimes, and a lot of times it doesn't even make the playoffs. And I think the ownership group has finally woken up to that, and they are changing that mentality this offseason. But I am telling you right now, the goal needs to be big. The goal needs to be to win the division. And even if they don't win the division, because there is a team that just wins a couple more games than them, at least make the playoffs. Be a wild card team, and even if you don't win the division. And that would be totally fine with me. So gotta dream big here, gotta have big goals for the season, because this is based on what the front office has said. So I am looking for a big season from several guys, and we're tired of being mediocre. This just cannot be a mediocre baseball team in the upcoming season. They need to be a competitive team that competes with the best teams in the American League and gets back to being the Boston Red Sox that other teams fear playing. So we'll see if that hopefully happens. I'm crossing my fingers that it does, because the Red Sox definitely have the ability to get there, and they're not as far as you think. They just need to make the right moves to get there. So we will see what happens with that. I hope that Craig Breslow and company are on it, and that they can land some big names here in the coming weeks. Thank you for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen today. Be sure to next check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, who will provide a lot of humor and combine it with his knowledge of baseball to keep you updated on what's going on around the league. So if you're interested in hearing about what's going on with other teams, Locked On MLB is your place. You can get that show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in right after this. As always, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.